Letter number 20 addresses what Screwtape calls misdirecting sexual taste. What does this mean? The styles, the look, the mannerisms that become attractive for one sex to the other sex. So what it is that men seek in women, what it is that women seek in men. Obviously this varies from time to time, place to place, and the delightful satiric thing that Lewis accomplishes here is suggesting that somehow the devil's influence are in charge of what it is that popular artists, dressmakers, advertisers put out as the models, as the standards for what it is that we're supposed to find attractive. Remember back to the earlier letter that when we talk about a bad marriage, we don't mean a marriage that will melt down and end in some kind of bitter divorce. Screwtape wants a marriage where the people stay together, but they stay together in a way that is not helpful for the moral and spiritual life of the couple. As he puts it in the previous letter, you want to find for this patient a young woman for him to marry who would make the Christian life intensely difficult for him to follow. That's the idea, from a diabolic point of view, of a good marriage. So you want to influence people in a way in which you're guiding each sex away from those with whom they would have helpful, happy, or fertile marriages. So some of the examples that he gives. You make men with beards unpopular. And what he seems to be implying is that somehow more manly types, stronger types, more virile types become undesirable. Maybe they're replaced by things that are pretty boys, that men who lack kind of the strength and virtue that you would want in a good husband. Conversely, that you make bossy or aristocratic women or excessively weak women. You make them popular as types with all the problems that those qualities create. At the time that Lewis is writing, in the Jazz Age, there's a type of woman that is boyish in her appearance, a woman who's going to fear pregnancy and aging, who's therefore going to be adverse to the procreative ends of marriage and excessively worried about her appearance. These are all things that are going to undermine marriage in the sense of a stable union for the sake of bringing a family and raising that family together. Further, Screwtape talks about how it is that all men are haunted by what he describes as two imaginary women, a terrestrial Venus and an infernal Venus. Now, obviously, Venus here, the goddess of love, and these two types of women embody two different kinds of desires. One has to, Lewis's insight here, I think, is important because he's not suggesting that somehow the attraction that men have for women or vice versa is unimical, is homogeneous, is all of the same kind. That in fact, we can have two very different kinds of desires for the opposite sex. And we have to recognize the difference, the radical difference between those two. So the terrestrial Venus, this is a kind of girl next door. This is the embodiment of what is wholesome, what is naturally good, what is naturally satisfying in a relationship with a woman. That there's something about her that is beautiful and brings out what is best in you. A kind of kindness, a kind of sweetness. It's not something that necessarily is supernatural or religious, although it's open to that. That's a kind of earthly love. Again, a kind of natural expression of what it is that is the highest kind or the best kind of attraction that a man would have for a woman, just from an earthly perspective. On the other hand, there's the infernal Venus. That is the attraction that a man has for a woman that is disordered, that seeks really what is lowest, that there's something strange, weird, disordered, dangerous, risky, even foolhardy about this love. it seeks not a beloved in the sense of a bride, but rather seeks, as Screwtape puts it, an ally, an accomplice, a slave. All of these things that are sort of the worst elements of attraction for a woman. What Screwtape suggests is we want, as much as possible, for him to seek in a woman that infernal type, that type which reflects his lowest desires. And if we're lucky, you can even get this guy to marry such a girl. But of course, that's not necessary. Just to have him romantically involved in somebody who's going to be harmful to his spiritual and moral life. But best of all, that he would have some kind of permanent bond to this woman who really brings out what is worst in him. Lewis uses examples, obviously for men here, of female types. But of course, you could reverse it. Women have their own types of men to whom they are attracted to in wholesome ways or in disordered ways. So Lewis's language here, I think, is fairly easy to adapt from the other perspective. The point that Lewis makes is this, though, that in looking at the character of your attraction for a woman, you have to see that what is it allow for? What is it open to? Is it a love which is a kind of an earthly love that's open to something higher? Or is it a love in which you are rebelling against what's best in you and accepting something lower? Well, in the next letter, he'll take a little break from talking about love and romance and talk about the ownership of time, the way in which we think of the things around us as being our own, even time itself.